Tonight on Eyewitness News, we have the kind of news that is very difficult for us to report. It is a story that has touched us personally and tragically. Wylie Daniels, a veteran of 13 years here at Eyewitness News, died unexpectedly this morning after suffering a heart attack. The full story next, right here on Eyewitness News.
This is Eyewitness News, Maryland's most complete television news service. With Jerry Turner, Al Sanders, and the entire Eyewitness News team.
Good evening, everybody. There are many news stories to report to you tonight, but the one which is closest to us is the death of Eyewitness News reporter and anchorman Wylie Daniels. Today, Al Sanders and I have talked with many of the people who knew Wylie and told us about some of his life. He was found unconscious on the floor of a bedroom at his Wheeler Avenue home this morning and was dead on arrival at Provident Hospital. He and his wife Ruth had returned earlier after having dinner at a Towson restaurant, and he had shown no signs of illness. Wylie was born in Birmingham, Alabama. Was a graduate of Talladega College, held a Master of Arts degree from Emerson College in Boston. He moved to Baltimore in 1956 and became one of the city's most popular radio personalities while working at WEBB. In 1965, he joined the staff of Eyewitness News as a general assignment reporter, later hosting a number of programs, and most recently, the co-anchorman of Eyewitness News at noon. It was in his news reporting role that he achieved his greatest popularity among viewers and his fellow workers. But for Wylie, service to humanity transcended work. Quietly and without publicity, he helped hundreds who were in need. Most of them he didn't even know. It was his trademark. He had a great love for people and spent much of his life in the service of others. We all knew it here, but didn't advertise it. Wylie didn't need it and didn't want it. Marie Wadler never met Wylie Daniels, yet she got help from him on at least 3 occasions, just because she had nobody else to turn to, and all she did was ask.
Last summer I called him when this free camp, that they have for the children, and he told me it was too late then, that it had been advertised and it went to the papers and all. So, but he said before it be advertised, before it goes in the paper next year, you'll get the papers for your children, and sure enough they came.
Well, in other words, you consider him...
I had practically forgotten it, but they came.
But he remembered.
He remembered it.
Well, he was like that. You consider him a friend even though you didn't even know him or he didn't know you?
Never seen his face. Never seen him face to face except on that television.
The news of Wylie's death brought memories of his early years at Eyewitness News clearly back in focus for both members of the news team and Channel 13 viewers. Herbert B. Cahan was general manager of WJZ in 1965 when Wylie was hired as a member of the Eyewitness News staff. Cahan, who was responsible for Wylie's move here, remembers it with Jerry as a move beneficial for the Eyewitness News team and the total community.
He was more than just a television newsman. He was a great human being. And it's true, in 1965, one day I got a call from Delegate Troy Braley, and he said to me, he says, "I've got a young man I think you might be interested in." Well, that was probably one of the best decisions this station ever made, to hire Wylie.
Well, in many ways, he was a true pioneer here in Baltimore.
He sure was, and I presume Wylie would agree that probably the highlight of his career as it related to being a newsman was, not only covering those terrible riots of 1968, but the critical role that he played in helping to calm the community. And I know the police department and the mayor and everyone was so grateful for what he did that particular day.
William Box Harris, a former veteran Baltimore City policeman, and William Gant, a personal friend of Wylie's, also shared memories of Baltimore's turbulent times of riot in the late 60s.
The people were getting out of hand. As you know, I was head of police community relations at the time, and George Gelson told me to use any means that I could to break up a riot or disturbance. And Wylie said, "Hey, let me try the mic." So I gave him my bullhorn. He got up and made an announcement. "Why don't you guys go home? Why don't you guys listen to the policemen? These guys here to protect you, not to hurt you." After that, Wylie got in a car, and we received a call to East Baltimore that they were burning one of the stores down on Gay Street. And Wylie jumped in the car and rode over with us. And he was that kind of guy. He always wanted to become involved in things. In fact, when I was in post community relations, he would call me periodically and say, "Hey, Box," that's what I'm affectionately known by, but not as you know. And he said, "Box, what can I do? Can I come interview some of your people?" And when I had my kid program, my youth program, my movie program, and dealing with people, and Wylie was always the guy that always would give us a little plug that we needed.
In the job that we wanted Wylie to do, he would always participate, He never hesitated or anything, and he would go out his way to do anything to further the fraternity and the entire community.
D'Alessandro III was mayor of Baltimore during those turbulent times. He remembered this morning that Wylie was the first black reporter stationed by the electronic media in City Hall.
Wylie Daniels' presence went far beyond the television screen. He was an active member of this community, a man whose interests were beyond the daily routine of the news business. Channel 13 Vice President and General Manager Steve Kamadian has a few words about Wylie.
This is a sad time for all of us here at Channel 13, and we know that it's a sad time for many of you. Today marks the first time in many years that the anchorman of our midday news was not Wylie Daniels. As you have learned, Wylie died of a heart attack early this morning. It isn't our purpose at this point to enumerate the achievements of Wylie Daniels as a newscaster and as a generous, dedicated citizen of Baltimore, giving his time and his effort to so many community activities. We want to express mainly our shock and sorrow at losing such a fine human being in the prime of his years, and our profound condolences to Ruth, his devoted wife, and his family. At the same time, we want to express our gratitude that we at Channel 13 had the privilege of working with so competent a news person and so fine a person. In the best sense of the word, Wylie Daniels was a professional. We will miss him greatly, and we know you will miss him too.
As we have told you, Wylie was very active in the community. As Vice President of the Association of Black Media Workers, he was the first recipient of the group's Frederick Douglass Award, an honor bestowed each year on an outstanding black journalist. That award will now bear his name. The group also plans to offer a Wylie Daniels scholarship to a high school student each year taking broadcasting courses in college. Wylie was also a member of the Maryland chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists. They, too, plan to set up a scholarship in his name.
Don Scott is standing by live in City Council chambers right now, where a special tribute in honor of Wylie Daniels is about to take place. Don?
And, Al, at this instant, we are in the City Council chambers where the City Council is about to adjourn. As a matter of fact, they've held up this session to this minute so that they could do their resolution to Wylie live on the air. Reading the resolution will be City Council President Walter Orlinsky, and go right ahead.
This is City Council Resolution 1344, resolution of the Baltimore City Council on the occasion of the death of Wylie Daniels, Jr. Wylie Daniels, a prominent member of the press and an outstanding citizen of the city of Baltimore, departed this life on December 8, 1977. Mr. Daniels was raised in Alabama. He received a Bachelor of Arts degrees from Talladega College in 1949. He subsequently earned a Master's of Arts degree in Radio and Television Communications from Emerson College in Boston. Mr. Daniels has been a general assignment reporter for Channel 13 Eyewitness News since 1965. There he provided the finest of broadcast coverage of the news in his capacity as co-author and co-anchorman of the noontime broadcasts, as well as in his capacity as producer and host of Black Point program. Prior to his television career, he was the program director and disc jockey of WEBB Radio in Baltimore. The respect which Mr. Daniels was accorded for his professional endeavors was matched only by that which he earned for his commitment to the Baltimore community. Mr. Daniels sat on the Board of Governors of the Baltimore Goodwill Industry, as well as the Board of Directors of the Maryland chapter of Cystic Fibrosis. He worked hard for the local efforts of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. For 3 years, he served as chairman of the annual Celebrity Phonathon for the United Fund of General Maryland. An ardent champion of education of our young, he worked many hours on behalf of the United Negro College Fund. Wylie Daniels was one of the city's first black television reporters. As such, he paved the way for other black reporters in Baltimore and Maryland television. At the time of his death, however, he is remembered for that, and also for the fact that he was a warm and considerate man who liked his co-workers and fellow Baltimoreans. He indeed was a credit not only to his profession, but to the city of Baltimore and its people. Resolved by the City Council of Baltimore that in the death of Wylie Daniels, Jr., this city and state has lost one of its finest citizens, and it joins with many Baltimoreans who mourn this great loss. Be it resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to his wife, Ruth, his father, and his brother. The Chair would like to ask the Council to approve the resolution by rising in a moment of silence.
Live from our Baltimore City Council chambers. And so the tributes have poured into Channel 13 throughout the day from people who stroll through all stages of Wylie Daniels' life. Baltimore Mayor William Donald Schaefer and Acting Governor Blair Lee with their own remembrances of Wylie.
I knew him as Wylie Daniels had walked around the community and cared about how the neighborhood looked, whether the housing was adequate, whether there was trash on the back lot. And when he walked around with us, he always had a positive suggestion on how to improve the lot of the people. I knew him in another capacity when he was out trying to figure out a way to build additional new housing in the city of Baltimore. Now, those are different than just being on television as a television celebrity. The city will be not as good a city without a man like Wylie Daniels, a man who cared, a man who was a friend, a man who was a very decent individual.
I am very sorry to hear of the death of Wylie Daniels. He's a young man. It's a very untimely thing. And he was a good reporter. I'd like to express my personal regrets to his family and to Channel 13.
He knew a lot about municipal government and the problems down in the street. He was a good liaison for street people to the city hall and vice versa. So I saw him not only as a reporter and a friend, but as a good pulse taker of the problems that confront the community.
There were a lot of problems to confront the community back in the 60s.
That's right, and he was almost a walking delegate, so to speak, for the poor and for the media dealing with poor problems with the so-called establishment, if that's what we represented.
One of those who knew Wylie the best and the longest is Eddie Castleberry, and who, like Wylie, is a native of Birmingham, Alabama. Mr. Castleberry was at one time on the staff here at Channel 13, is now associated with the National Black Radio Network in New York. He's just flown into Baltimore tonight to be with us here on this program and to visit with Wylie's family. And Eddie, it's good to see you again. And you did go back with Wylie a long way, all the way to Birmingham, Alabama, many years ago. What was it like back there? How did he get started in radio?
Well, he started on station WEDR in Birmingham. He was one of the first black announcers there, and it was kind of rough because I believe the first time that the station was going on, the Ku Klux Klan damaged our radio tower, and Wylie had to go on under very adverse circumstances. He was responsible for my career in radio. He had to do some Army service, and although I knew him very slightly, he knew a little bit about me, and he asked me to come up and take his place when he went to the Army.
Those, well, as you said, were difficult times for blacks, and I guess when you think about it, a lot of what I have today, and a lot of what you have today, can be attributed to Wylie Daniels.
Very much so, very much so. He helped me and quite a few others too, and taught us everything that he knew. And you always got the idea that he was a very, very smart person, but at the same time you also got the idea that he didn't look down on you because you probably didn't know as much as he did, and made it beautiful.
He never considered himself, at least my opinion, and I've known him for an awful long time, a television star or a celebrity, and it always impressed me that he was, it was very easy for him to associate with people, and he liked people.
Yes, yes.
Did he honestly like the pioneer role that he was more or less, I guess, forced into by wanting this business?
I don't think Wylie ever thought about it, really. In the conversations I had with him over the years, he never mentioned it. I was the first this, first that. I don't think that mattered too much to Wylie. He was in love with whatever he was doing, and he concentrated on that. The cliches and things like that never worried him.
Well, we're going to miss him.
Yeah, he was sorely missed. Eddie, thank you very much for coming by, and as a former member of the staff here, it's always a pleasure to see you again, and thank you very much. I know you had a hard trip coming down from New York, but it's nice to see you, and I know that tonight you'll be visiting with Wylie's family, and give them our regards.
I will.
Eddie Castleberry. Incidentally, we might mention, too, that the family requests that in lieu of flowers, donations be sent to the American Diabetes Association or the American Cancer Society. Wylie is survived by his wife, Ruth Saunders Daniels, his father, Wylie E. Daniels, Sr. of Los Angeles, California, and his brother, Sherwood Daniels of Chicago, Illinois. Funeral arrangements are still incomplete at this time. So death has taken one of the good people of the world. The people Wylie Daniels worked with during the past 13 years, many of them now in other cities, have called in to express their sorrow. and people from all walks of life. Heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali, who called to lament the passing of Wylie, whom he called a great man. The many charities he served, the many boards he sat on, the many people he silently helped, those of us who had the honor of knowing him and working with him are all saddened by his death. He will be missed. Just before we close tonight, Hal and I both, I'm sure, have a couple of thoughts on our pretty tough event of the day. And, you know, no matter what happens in our private or personal lives, this program does go on and news continues to happen. And as you probably have suspected, in losing one of our own, this has not been one of our happier days. But I can remember talking to Wylie Daniels, and I had this thought before we went on the air that by virtue of what we do, being on television, that you do become recognized, and Wylie certainly was one of the more recognizable people in Baltimore. He said many times that he never thought of himself as a celebrity or star, but one thing it did do, the exposure and recognizability factor, was it gave him an opportunity to do some things and to get some things done and to return a little bit to the people who were kind enough to watch, and he certainly returned an awful lot to those people.
You know, I've been here 5 years now. And for 5 years, 96 to 97% of the people who stop me on the street call me Wylie Daniels. And I'm just glad that it didn't take me 5 years to realize what a tremendous compliment that is. And Frank Luber said earlier today, and he, George, you've been together a long time as a team. Frank said if you didn't like Wylie Daniels, you just didn't like people.
That's one of the better quotes I have seen today, because that is absolutely true.
That's true.
And part of our team is gone, and as I said before, he is missed and will be.
Well, that's our report to the moment. The ABC Evening News is next. I'm Al Sanders.
I'm Jerry Turner for the entire Eyewitness News team. Good night, everybody.